I'm here with Mick Dixon, the producer and director of War School, and I've just attended a showing and discussion about this film at the Temple of Peace in Cardiff. Mick, could you explain briefly the rationale behind the movie?
So the idea of this movie is to draw people's attention to the fact that the government now have a coherent strategy to persuade the public to support their wars and also to target children to support their wars and their military and also to join the military. And these children are from this height.
They call it the remembrance period, but actually there's no remembrance going on at all. It's the opposite of remembrance, it's concealment. Concealment of the true nature of war and militarism.
It's evil, really, and it's immoral, I think, really, what they're doing.
We saw this different instance of militarisation happening around the country. We went to Forces Watch and we said, all this stuff's happening. There's got to be some kind of strategy behind it.
It's a bit like the man who asked the fish, how's the water? And the fish says, what water? Because that culture, that militarism is just all around them.
We're sleepwalking into a more militarised society, and if you look at more militarised societies in the world, is that really the direction we want to head in?
Their way of doing things is to invade countries, to occupy countries, to wipe out families in a drone strike. I am opposed to that. I am a threat to that. I am a threat to your way of doing things.
In the film, there's some very young girls wearing helmets with flashing lights and guns. Presumably they were playing some sort of military game.
Yes, and all these games and all the things that you see at Armed Forces Day, like Commando Joes and all these things, they are subsidised by the government. Right. They're not just like they're because they're like a fairground thing. The government are promoting these little companies to do that.
Well, you mentioned a phrase taken from the actual army recruitment strategy paper.
So in 2008, it was the Blair-Brown government commissioned a report, the National Recognition of Our Armed Forces report, because of the unpopularity of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. They knew that the public were not supporting their wars. They had to find out why. When they found out why, they published this report with 40 different recommendations of how they could engage the public to support the military.
So Armed Forces Day was one of the things that came
Armed Forces Day, in fact, Armed Forces Day used to be Veterans Day, and as Sam Walton, Quaker, says in our film, they changed the name of Veterans Day to Armed Forces Day, because all these things now are support the troops. So your remembrance popping, rather than being an emblem of a symbol of remembrance, is now a support the armed forces popping.
Well, Lloyd George said that we were going to build a country fit for heroes, but in the end, soldiers' pensions were stopped, and it was left to charities to step in, and it still is to this day. The welfare of ex-soldiers is largely a charitable cause. There's no government.
No, exactly. And then the soldiers that require the support are being arguably used to bolster that charity. So you will see a number of organisations on the internet, good organisations doing good work for the thousands of veterans that are suffering physical and mental illnesses. And they have kind of, as it were, appropriated this sort of charitable side of it. So our film doesn't condemn that, but what it says is, how do they get there?
Right, yes. I know they're very good at rehabilitating soldiers' physical injuries, but I know there's an awful lot of, lack of resources to help with the mental stress, post-traumatic stress and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lack of resources.
The other thing is, when I was in America, the American military actually funded video games for children as a recruitment tool.
Yeah.
Do you know, to your knowledge, if the British government has?
Well, when I went to one of the army recruitment events on making this film, one of the first things that they were offering to people coming up was a virtual reality headset where they could go and experience what it was like to be in a war. There have been some, I believe, games that have been supported, I think, by the military, but they didn't get very far. But other things, like for instance...
The American one was a big success.
Yeah, they did. And the other thing is, like, if you see a TV program or a film, especially the big feature films in America, if they put an acceptable version of the military, they get all of that stuff provided free.
They have official military advisors that are paid for by the government.
Yeah, and you're talking about access to aircraft carriers for a major feature film.
I think something like the recent film, which featured a sort of high-tech version of the Navy, was done with government support.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Mick, and thank you so much for bringing this film to Cardiff, and hopefully we can bring it back to Cardiff for a workshop or another showing.
Yeah, and thanks for having us. And could I say, website is war.school.
War.school, everybody. Go and check it out. And you can find Veterans for Peace on Facebook. I'm here with Jane Harris from the Welsh Centre for International Affairs, and we've just seen a screening of War School, a very, very moving film about militarism in Britain. And it's part of a week-long series of events that are being held at the Temple of Peace and Health in Cardiff, which I believe are going to climax with the rededication of the Peace Garden.
Yes, that is one of the things that's happening at the end of this week. On Friday evening as well, we have a gala performance, which is a reenactment of the opening of the temple in 1938. Wow. So that's going to be quite something.
And this temple was founded by some of the people that were involved in founding the League of Nations, am I right in saying?
Yes, specifically by David Davis, Llandinam. And he actually fought in the trenches in World War I and then dedicated the rest of his life to trying to work for international peace.
And why is it called the Temple of Peace and Health?
Because those were the two things that he was passionate about. The other one was health. We had a particular problem in Wales with tuberculosis, as you probably know.
Well, and there was the Spanish flu,
and
which
flu
happened
after the epidemic at the end of World War I as well, yes.
Okay, so how can people find out about events that are coming up in the next few days at the Temple of Peace and Health?
The best thing to do is to go to the WCIA website, and on the homepage of that website there's a link where you can go into the programme of events and find out what's on.
And I believe there's also a Facebook page which has events listed.
There is as well, yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Jane, and thank you very much for bringing this wonderful film to Cardiff.
Yeah, very important.
Peace, 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 peace. Peace in your mind, peace on earth, peace at work, peace at home, peace in the world. Try and get people orientated, like think peace, like eat for peace, breathe for peace.